My name is Naomi Jane,
I'm Michelle Voigt.
and you're watching Santa Barbara Talks with Josh Molina.
Welcome to Santa Barbara Talks with Josh Molina. It's such a pleasure today to be here with Catherine Remak, who I have to tell you is just one of these amazing people in this community, somebody who we all know through radio, but also just throughout the community through her nonprofit work and her volunteer work and just really a shining light in the community. So I'm so happy to be able to talk to her about all things that she does, but I want to really focus on K-Lite 101.7 because I'm that demographic. I'm a regular listener, and I kind of have always been for decades, just always growing up on that station here. So, Catherine, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, and thank you. That was really a nice introduction. And I must say, Josh, and I have told you this, I was a fan of yours as well. I've been following you on Newshawk, and I think you're a great writer and reporter. So it's kind of been fun to become friends.
Yeah, thank you. I was so happy to meet you a couple of years ago. I've heard your voice for so long, and so I kind of want to just sort of dive in. I want to talk to you about your career, but I just want to start first with, for someone like me who loves music, who
Mhm.
loves listening to the radio, of course I have my, Apple Podcasts and Apple Music, and I listen to my songs, but there's something special about turning on your radio station, in my case, and so many others, K-Lite, and hearing a familiar voice. And your voice is so comforting. I feel like I'm home, I'm safe, it's familiar. And I always say, like, some of the best feelings in my car are like if Elton John's Tiny Dancer comes on a Sunday afternoon, or Billy Joel song, or
Yeah.
I turn it on and Catherine is talking, whether it's going over the news or playing a song or interviewing someone. And so I just think it's so cool what you do. So can you talk to me a little bit about being the voice of K-Lite? And of course, for decades you did it with Gary Fruin, of course. But what's this job like for you? What do you love about it?
Well, that's such a compliment to from you to say that my voice is a comfort, and I love that. I love that it is. It's nothing that I've worked on necessarily. It just kind of is my natural voice. But I think as I got more comfortable on the air, kind of like learning an instrument. I don't know if you play anything, but once you get the chords down on the guitar, then you know how to improvise. And so I think that's it. It actually, now that I think about it, when I first started, my emphasis was definitely on news because that was what I was doing when I was in college. And that is what I had hoped to do. And then I ended up in more an entertainment side, although I still do the news. But I remember after it was probably my first month or two at K-Lite when I was doing news, and our program director said that I sounded like I was doing the news. I sounded like a Mack truck because I was just like, whoa. So, I guess now that I think about it, it's like, I think my voice really has changed probably over the years. But yeah, but is in terms of getting into the business, that really was my emphasis. I always loved music. And I grew up here in Santa Barbara. I started playing drums when I was 14 and then switched over to guitar and singing, and I played in bands. So the music was kind of a hobby. And then when I got introduced to radio, actually out at UCSB, and then transferred to San Francisco State to do radio and television, I really got interested in news, and I love that. And so when I came back to Santa Barbara, it was really more about news, and I grew to be the news director at KTMS at the time, but I was also doing mornings with Gary.
Yeah.
But it was more just going in. I was just doing the news. In fact, one of the configurations, we were even separated by like glass before we were sitting together. And that's all I did. And then one of the stations was bought, and they gave me the option of which way I wanted to go.
Mhm.
And I just thought, I like the combination of being able to do news and and the music. So now it's combined for me, and it's been 32 years. And that was a really long answer to your question.
No, that's great. Can you kind of walk me through what your morning and your day is? What time do you have to wake up in order to get to the station and prepare? I'm fascinated by your schedule because, I can roll out of bed at 7:30, help my daughter get to school, then go to work. But when you're on air, it's a
Oh
schedule.
yeah.
Got to be on time. What is your day like?
7:30, that's luxurious for me. So, I've been doing this for so long that whenever I tell people, I realize it does sound really crazy, but it's really just it's ingrained in me now. So, I am up about 3:45 in the
Wow.
morning. I used to be able to sleep in a little bit longer, but now that I'm up in the San Ynez Valley, I need to make the trek in.
Mhm.
So, I I'm up at that time. I usually leave the house by say 4, and I'm there at about 45 minutes early. I go on the air at 5:30, and I sometimes do prep before I get there, the night before. Often I'll just so it's almost second nature now. A lot of the things that I usually know at least several of the elements I'm going to do, but I do write all my news. Thank you to Newshawk and KEYT and other sources that I have.
Yeah.
And but the local news part I gather, and then I've got various sources. So it's usually by the time I get into the station, I'm at 4:45 or so. I'm using that next 45 minutes to just figure out what my on-air elements are going to be. And then through the morning, of course, that's ever changing. And I've got lots of different prep services that I use. And then I stack my own news. So that's also nice. I usually lead with local news and go into national news and to have fun kicker stories and engage the audience. But so usually I'm on 5:30 to around 10, but then I'm at the station doing various things till noon or a little bit longer now.
Yeah.
So,
So
yeah.
what time do you go to sleep at night?
Well, I like to say my perfect scenario would be to go to bed about 8:30, but it doesn't work with the schedule that and John and the only time we can see each other is the evening. So I'll let you in on a little secret. Napping is great.
Right.
So I'm a big napper. I usually
Yeah.
try to nap an hour a day or so.
So, talk to me about the changes in radio from when you started until now. Obviously, the news industry, journalism on
Mm,
my side has
yeah.
changed dramatically. Did you used to go into a studio with a whole bunch of people and it was sort of buzzing and obviously it's not like that now.
Yeah,
How has
no,
it
yeah,
changed?
that's so interesting. Though there's been a lot of changes in radio. That's one of them. We certainly had a way more robust staff. But in terms of, so just for K-Lite, we have had so many different incarnations, and I've actually lived through and been carried over with 5 different owners.
Wow.
So we've gone from total mom and pop, a couple of guys that owned us long ago, and then were sold again. And then we went to a company called J-Core, and then they merged with Clear Channel, which I think a lot of people know is now iHeartRadio. And then they sold off. They went private. And
Uh-huh.
so they had to sell off anything that was over 100 market. So for people that don't know, that's just Santa Barbara's a 199 market. Chicago, LA, those areas are, 1, 2, 3. And so we were bought by another company. They've owned us now, though, for about 20 years.
Mhm.
When they first came in, and they're Rincon Broadcasting here. When they first came in, we have a pretty large building, and everything downstairs was all admin and sales. And it was bustling when you said that. Yes, I remember that time. It is not bustling. We now sublet the bottom to neighborhood clinics,
Mhm.
and we still have our 5 stations, but there's not as much on-air live presence. The live shows are just few and far between anymore, so I feel really fortunate. But I think radio's changed in general. I mean, it's such a great question. I sometimes when I start to get bummed about it, I do think there are some positive things for us in this community. Is that the one thing that it's taught me is that people have a lot of different options. You were just talking about you could download your podcast, or so it really makes you think about what does the local what is our community that's tuning in want, and they want to feel connected to their community. So, yes, it's great to do some fun feature stories from another state or do things but I really try to keep it local. And I think I always did, but now more than ever, because that's the biggest comment I hear from people when I talk to our listeners. I feel connected to the community, and that's really important to people. And so that is one thing that local radio can still offer, because they could really, people could get their songs anywhere else, their music. They really could get weather and traffic and they could collect all that themselves, but they love having it from somebody, I think, that is here and is local. And then the blend of the music too, like you said. So it's definitely changed.
Well, it's funny because I could play my favorite song over and over myself, right? But
Yeah.
when you hear it on the radio, it's something different. It's almost as though the song is being sent to you from above, right?
Isn't that true?
It's a
Yeah.
sign that you heard this song right now.
Yeah.
And it just feels different when your favorite song comes on, as opposed to when you just sort of play it on, with your own, phone or something, or on your car. Um, and so I think that's
Yeah.
the power of that.
That's really interesting you say that. I think maybe at first when you were saying that, I was thinking maybe because we remember listening to radio in the old days
Mhm.
where you couldn't really get it other places, or if you really wanted to hear a song again, you had to record the song that was on the radio and then
The
play it
tape.
back.
Uh-huh.
But I do think sometimes that there's kind of a magic in it where people will say, I can't believe you just played that song. That's the song I just needed, and so maybe there is something like that is that there is something very special about the medium of radio
Yeah.
and its
So,
arbitrariness.
oh yeah. I mean, if you hear
Yeah.
a song at a certain time of the day, it made you think of something. It was meant to be. It was destiny.
Right, right.
So how do you decide what songs to play? There are some songs I feel I'm going to hear until the day I die. Like George Michael songs or something.
Right.
Like every I can count on hearing them on K-Lite. So it's like it's 80s, 90s, I guess. Some 2000. It's kind of some recent songs too. But do you, Catherine, do you get to just decide what you want to play? Is there a list to
So
pull
we
from?
have, luckily, right now, a really great program director. His name is Brian Davis. He works out of our Ventura stations, and we've got a great relationship. Their songs are loaded into the well, you've seen it before, the program, the system, but I get to play anything I want. I change the songs around constantly, and sometimes I play things that aren't even in our library. So I have the freedom to do that. But yeah, I mean, and when I say that things are programmed, people go, oh, see, so radio is so programmed now. I will tell you, when I started, I didn't start with records, but but I did start with CDs.
Yeah.
And you still, when you went in, you had a stack of CDs and you knew which one was supposed to be played next. The art of programming is just an art in and of itself. And so there's lots of different formulas to follow. For K-Lite, we're called an AC station. It's an adult contemporary station. So
Yeah.
you're right. I mean, we don't have as many of the 80s anymore. We do have some 80s. We're more 90s, 2000s, but definitely we go back to the 80s. And then, because we're an adult contemporary station, we get to add the new artists, which I think is a beautiful blend. I think the thing that's in common with all of the songs, aside from being light rock, they're also I don't know, I want to say it in a cheesy way, but they're feel good. It's a feel good station. It's like there's something about each of those songs that's selected that either makes you want to smile, makes you want to dance, gets you thinking about maybe it's something sad, but it's thought provoking.
Yeah.
So
You definitely, it feels good. You hear these songs
yeah.
and they lift you up. What are some of your favorite songs to play?
Oh, that's so. I used to be, I really grew up with like Fleetwood Mac was my first concert I went to. James Taylor's hands down my favorite artist to go see, and Elton John. So those were kind of my favorite when I was growing up, and probably up until several years ago. I love listening to them still,
Yeah.
but I've got to tell you, okay, so my favorite feel-good song is Leanne Womack, I Hope You Dance.
Yes.
Um, but I am really liking this new crop of artists like the Teddy Swims and Benson Boone.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I don't, there's, I've seen them rotate in and out again. And it's funny. I remember when Adele first started, and now she seems like she's in the older generation now.
Right.
I love her voice. I think, Lady Gaga to me is sort of a modern day Barbara Streisand, so talented.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's across the gamut.
Yeah. And I mentioned at the top of the show, sort of your voice being sort of, it feels sort of like inspiring, inspirational, friendly, familiar. And I remember the first time I saw you in person, it was at an AWC event. I think you were getting an award or you were moderating or something. And I remember seeing you in person and being like, wow, that's the person with the voice, right? So, can you talk to me a little bit? I know you said you haven't done much voice work, but I mean, you seem to have this voice that kind of pierces you. So, when did that start? I mean, you obviously were interested in radio. When did you
I
realize you had a way to communicate with people?
that's an interesting question. I think I didn't realize it so much. I see now that maybe other people saw it in me. I
Mhm.
remember I grew up here locally.
Uh-huh.
So I went to school at Montecito Union, and I was kind of like that very awkward fifth, sixth grader all the way through junior high school. But I remember our principal at the time asking if I would give was kind of like the commencement speech, which was and present the gift in the sixth grade class. And I remember thinking, wow, I think he thinks I can speak, so I might. And that kind of started then. And then when I was in high school, I was kind of searching for where I belonged. I liked sports, but I wasn't that great at it. And I just found music. And so I got really involved in choir and madrigals. And so that's when I honed, like, I think maybe there is something about having a singing voice also.
Mhm.
And so yes, I went back to school late. I'd gone to City College, got a degree in graphic communications, and went to work for a place called Wavefront Technologies that some people may know. And then I left there, and I thought, I kind of want to go back to school. I felt really like old going back to school. I think I was 24. And I got into UCSB, and I was there and I was studying communications, but it was very theory oriented and I was kind of bored, and I decided that I was going to walk into their radio station. Now remember, I have no experience at all in radio. The radio is KCSB out there.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, I could do this, a microphone. I'd been in a band, so I know how to work a microphone, and I love music. So I think I'll do it. And, it was an alternative station. I really didn't know what that meant, But I will tell you that every time you did a shift, you had to write down all the songs that you wrote. So
Uh-huh.
I was just picking all the bubblegum, whatever we were listening to back then. And I got this note from the program director, and it had a check by each of the songs. And I'm like, oh, I did so well. And then I looked at the bottom and said, check equals never play this again on this radio station. But I did love, that's when I first fell in love with the medium. And then I wrestled with, um, I wasn't engaged at UCSB, and that was really hard for me because my father was a professor there. And and I knew I needed a hands-on program. And I went to San Francisco State, and has a really great radio and television program. If anybody's listening that is interested in broadcast and is young enough, highly recommend it. And the other good thing about living in San Francisco is I got to be away from Santa Barbara, which was wonderful if you've lived in a place for a long time. And they had tremendous internships. So I started interning at KGO and CNN. I did an internship at CNN and in radio and KGO. So I really got my feet wet there. And anybody that's been in radio, Ray Talaferro was there at the time, an old radio guy. And I remember writing my first newscast and hearing him in the hallway read what I had written. And I was just like, oh. So it was cool. And so when I came back to Santa Barbara, I had that experience and was able to get hired right away in radio.
Yeah.
So,
So you do morning interviews as well with people.
yes.
So can you talk about that part of it? So you have to do a lot of things. You read the news, you interview,
Yeah.
play music, you fill a lot of different roles. What is it like for you to bring someone on, whether it's the mayor or it's somebody doing something, incredible with an organization, or it's UCSB Arts and Letters, sort of, somebody.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
what do you
think
like about that?
probably, yeah. I mean, for you, I would say probably the same thing with your podcast,
Mhm.
which is why I really appreciate your interview style. I so enjoy talking to people and hearing about their stories. And I really like having things that are non-scripted. So sometimes, especially if somebody's uncomfortable about being on the air, they'll ask for a list of questions. I'm like, I don't really do that, but here's a few, and
Yeah,
then we'll see where it goes, which is kind of like what I appreciated about you.
yeah,
Um, I I'm fascinated by people's stories, and honestly, it could be the mayor. And he does come on once a month now for an Ask the Mayor piece, which I really like. Love interviewing musicians. I love listening to what our area nonprofits are all about. But I also just like the everyday story. I found somebody that was doing something really phenomenal and in Santa Barbara. And recently, this one comes to mind. There was a local couple, they're both teachers. They somehow decided that they were going to enter Variety magazine's favorite couple. And all of a sudden they're in the top two. And so, like, what is their story? And then being able to weave stories into music is also something that I love. So I like making people feel comfortable, and which is so easy to do in radio. I don't know how it is on your podcast. I think it's a little different when people feel like their face is there,
yeah,
but it's very easy in the studio just to make someone feel like they're just talking. And
yeah,
that's my favorite thing, is to get somebody comfortable enough for that. Yeah.
yeah. That's great. I interviewed
Yeah.
that couple too, and
Oh, you did? Weren't they great?
I forget the husband's name, but he would
Leon.
he would admit this. He is a very goofy guy, but he's got an incredible personality.
Yeah.
He loves his wife so much, and he's just.
Yeah.
I'm sure he told you the story of how he proposed, and he had
Yeah.
sort of this whole little group of people, flash mob kind of thing. But yeah, I remember that them too, for sure. So, you've done this job now for more than 30 years, right? And
Yeah.
so what do you still love about it? I mean, do you love it today as much as you did before? Like, what's your favorite part of your day?
Oh, that's such a good question. I do love it every bit as much. I think about it and I'm not over exaggerating. Every day when I pull into the studio, it's dark. I'm the first person there at the studio. It's always been that way. I think to myself, I am so lucky. I love this job. I think the big thing about why I love the job is I never know exactly what's going to happen. And it's like it's a new day. It could go anywhere from news that breaks. I mean, we were on the air 9/11 when the second plane hit to something phenomenal. And, we just announced whoever has won an election, or you just never know, or a listener that could totally change the tone of the show. Or we get onto a subject. So I love the randomness of it, and I will admit that I probably have some like ADHD little things, and so for me, there's nothing better than having the day going through all. I have to go in a million different directions, which serves me well, and then it's done, and it's like I don't have to carry anything over to the next day, basically that day's done, and so there's something that feels good about that I think, so my favorite part of the day is not knowing where it's going to go, being able to the thing I love about radio. There was a time that I had thought about getting into television news long ago, and which was more of my training when I was in college, but I love also the immediacy of radio. So something happens and, I can get the sheriff on the line, or I can find out I don't have to wait for a camera crew and something else. And so I love the immediacy of it,
Yeah.
of radio. Yeah.
So you love Santa Barbara. You're from here. You grew up locally. I did too, and I worked in the Bay Area for a few years.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, I worked at the San Jose Mercury News, and
Oh, my gosh.
that included covering all over the Bay, different types of stories. It's the
Where
best
did you go
job.
to school locally?
Well, I went to Dos Pueblos High
Okay.
School and
Yeah.
City College, Cal State Northridge, San Diego State, and then,
Yeah.
worked at the News Press before the meltdown, and then went up to the Bay Area for a while. It was actually the San Jose Mercury News was the best job I ever had, like actual job in terms of
Yeah.
the work, the challenge, the money, the big market. But the quality of life for me was never as good as here.
Yeah.
And so, did you ever have any aspirations to do radio in a larger market, or did you always know this was your home?
Well, I will tell you that the first thought when I got into radio in Santa Barbara was not to stay here. To me, it was sort of a temporary job. I saw it going on for a few years and then moving into another market, certainly. But what happened was Gary and I, my former host, became so close, and we just had this vibe together. We thought together for a while that we might try to bring it to another market. And then we both had kids, like literally probably I think by 2 years after I started with Gary, I had my son. 9 months later, they had their daughter. And she's my goddaughter, and Cameron, my son, was his godson. And our families hung out a lot here. And as we had the kids and started to raise them here, we both this was a conscious decision. We don't want to move. This is really something. We want to be here. My parents were here, and it really, it was our families too, but it was also the station. I couldn't see leaving K-Lite. It felt like home to me.
Yeah.
And so it's funny, I've known a lot of people that have gone on to larger markets. And there was one thing that tempted me some time ago. And I haven't really shared this with anybody, but I love the long form reporting so much. I've always a dream would be to work for NPR, which I may do sometime in retirement. If they're still around. And no, they will be. And so I did get a job offer from NPR, and I was due to go out. It was their Portland facility, and I had made it to like a second round, and then I just said, I can't do this.
Yeah.
So There's been some little temptations, but I'm so glad. I'm so glad I stayed here. This is the K-Lite listeners, I often call them my family, my
Yeah.
extended family, and it feels like that. So
Yeah, well, that's the one thing about this community is you really matter. You make an impact. We're a small town, I mean, we have a lot of people, but we
yeah.
act like a very small town, and someone in journalism or just someone in the community can have a huge impact. You mentioned Gary, so let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
He's been your partner for a number of years, and he was also a very familiar, comforting voice. And you two were a great team, and you played off each other, and you had great conversations. And it was, obviously so sad and tragic when he passed away. So can you talk about just what it was like to work with Gary all these years, and you know how you've adjusted since?
Yeah, yeah, I may shed a tear or two, but that's okay. That's real. Gary and I, the transition, it's really happened in three parts for me. I first got to the station, and I told you I was just doing news, and literally the station is still licensed in Carpinteria, so the station was in Carpinteria, and there was a glass barrier between us. So I could see him, I could see the board, what he was working, but I just literally came in to do the news, and that's all I did. And there was a little bit of chemistry there, but there was some interaction, but not a lot. And so once we moved studios and we were in the same studio, he really became my mentor. I mean, uh, I remember the first time he turned to me and said, "Why don't you back announce the song when we come out of it?" Like, all I had done was news. I wasn't co-hosting or anything like that. And so he was my mentor. He really brought me into that co-host position. And we'd field calls and edit them. And then he became a friend. Um, and then finally, I think in the final stage, his family. I mean, he was my closest male friend that I had, and was really more like a brother. And so we had such an interesting dynamic. And a lot of people thought we were married, which is so funny.
Mhm.
But I mean, I knew Gary, and part of the reason I loved him so much was because he loved his wife and daughter. I've never seen a better father than Gary Fruin. He loved his daughter so much, and his stepdaughter. And as a matter of fact, his daughter, my Delaney, and I don't think they'd mind me saying, it was just Delaney and I that were present when Gary passed at Serenity House.
Oh, yeah.
So I will always have that moment. But, I think about him all the time. And anybody that's lost somebody that's that close to you,
Mhm.
they're always there. I always feel them in the studio. Can you imagine? I mean, it's really probably longer than some people spend with their spouse, but for 30 years, we spent probably 6 hours a day in a little room. You've been there, so big,
Yeah.
together. So yeah, I really miss him. I miss the interaction. I miss the corny jokes. And so yeah, he'll always be a part of. He'll always be a part of the show.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
And is he irreplaceable from this point forward? Or are you doing it alone?
What I've done is I gave this a lot of thought, actually. And I think for me, I don't know what the incarnation of the station would be after I leave. But what I decided was I was going to start to bring on feature reporters. So people that I could interact with and just kind of expand the show. So I now have a active lifestyle sports reporter, Dawn Schroeder, that comes in on Tuesday. She goes out and gets audio for me, and she does
Oh.
like this last one this last Tuesday. She did What Happened with the Triathlon, and a young girl who was running and swimming and biking in her mom's honor, a woman who died while swimming 6 years ago. So she brings that element. And then I have the restaurant guy, John Dixon, who I went to school with at Montecito Union.
Oh,
So he
okay.
comes in and talks restaurants. And then I have a fairly new reporter, Dwayne Henry, who does entertainment news. And he comes in on Friday and he hangs out a little bit longer with me. And then I added the mayor piece. So I like to joke that it took all four of them to make up for Gary, and we're not even there. So
Right.
that's yeah.
Yeah, John Dixon lives in my neighborhood, so I
Oh, he's great.
see him every now and then. And he's that British accent, they're fun.
Yeah.
I want to move on from radio in just a second, but this is going to be the dumbest question I ask you. But I listen to K-Lite. We listen in the evening, and my daughter and I, we love to, if we're in the car together, we love the whole like dedications and Delilah.
Yeah.
These people call in. Now I realize that's probably syndicated and it's in a whole bunch of different markets, but and you're probably asleep by this, by the time it gets going. Like maybe there's a bigger question there too. But I mean, do you know that person? How popular is that
So
feature?
before I answer that question, you have to sing it.
Delilah.
Delilah. Yeah, I don't know her personally, but I know all about her, and the story is actually really interesting. At least I think so, but I'm in the business. So many years ago, say 20 now, it could be, might be more. Everything changes with technology, and stations became what we call automated. So enough that you could walk away from a station and still have music playing and still have recorded things. That was never the case. Somebody always had to be at the station playing that next element. Think about it, putting on a record or yeah. So when automation happened, the stations were allowed all of a sudden to have the freedom of not having an overnight shift or the what we would call the undesirable shifts. Even Delilah's, even though a lot of people listen, we also carry another syndicated show from midnight to 5, which is John Tesh. And
Oh,
so they compete in various markets for that evening slot. So I'll tell you the upside and then I'll tell you the downside.
okay.
So a place in Seattle called Jones Media said, well, we got to do something with this. This is great potential. And Delilah was such a success story. So they took Delilah. It was a syndicated program. The last I know, and I haven't even checked recently, she's like in 250 markets, right? She's phenomenal. She's great. She's got a really good, I like her show because she's connected to the music. I'm not so, John Tesh is good. He's got good feature stuff, but he's never back announcing a song or doing. So, so we, the stations, get Delilah for free. In exchange for, we carry them the spots that the national company sells,
Okay.
right? So it makes the station sound. I mean, before, if you were tuned in a market like K-Lite in the evening time, you and your daughter would hear somebody that was not first time on the air, but pretty rough.
Yeah.
So it's changed it. The downside for me is that those jobs are gone now.
Yeah.
So, where does somebody in a market like this get their foot in the door in terms of getting on the air? And it's very difficult.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But I do think she has a great show. I do. You know who she's really popular with? All kinds of demographics. And I'm always like, the ratings just came out again.
Uh-huh.
There are a lot of young people that listen to Delilah. So
I have to tell you, I mean, so people actually call in, like people actually call in somewhere and she actually talks to them or
that's a really good question. I've never called the number. I should do it. My guess is that it's an automated line and they'll
Yeah.
say, you've reached Delilah. tell me who you are, what your story is, and then
Okay.
she's probably asking the questions to make it sound. But I shouldn't say that because I don't know. But I do know she's got a fascinating story. She's adopted. She's like the mother to 10 or 11 kids,
Yeah.
all adopted. A single mom.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, well, that's just like another thing, that is part of what I love about K-Lite, is that part of this show too. And before we move on, because I want to ask you kind of a, personal question too,
yeah.
some recent stuff, but I want to say that kind of in closure, one of the things I really appreciate about you and Gary over the years is you're not political, right? Like you can listen to the radio and you can listen to you all talk and the issues will come up, but you always feel like you're listening to objectivity,
Mhm.
fairness, a conversation. There's never any sense of, oh, I think Catherine's this way or that way,
Yeah.
or here's what she really means. And that's the great thing about radio is that it's an escape from, especially in 2025, all of the
Yes. I
divisiveness
know.
that's out there. You turn on K-Lite, you hear your favorite song, you hear a familiar
Yeah.
voice, a little banter. So I think you do a good job of that. And I would imagine that, there's some rules on that, but I also imagine that you have to resist. It shows a lot of discipline, to not necessarily go off on, things that you think when you remember that, you're there
Yeah.
for everyone, no matter
Yeah.
who they are, what they like to listen to. So I do always appreciate that it's always safe.
Thank you. Yeah, it is intentionally done. And as you mentioned, it's been more difficult, I think, with the divisiveness that's going on. I always think a couple of things. One is in terms of news or my opinion, if people are really interested in hard news and what's going on, they're going to go somewhere else anyway. I also, as far as news goes, and this isn't just politically, like I don't know when this is going to play back, but you're getting me on the eve of a horrific shooting, as you know, at the
Yeah.
church. Um, those are things I intentionally don't cover because I'm aware, very aware that kids are listening. So I think there's so many things to choose from
Yeah.
that I'm aware of those kinds of stories as well, and always think people that really want to know this will find out somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying I water it down. I just am aware that our core listeners, not all of them, but I really appreciate that there's families listening. And one of the best compliments somebody can give me is that, you've been in our family for generations. And I'm actually now on, it makes me feel so old, a third generation of listener. So
Yeah.
somebody that was a kid growing up listening with their mom or dad going to school now has kids of their own. And
Yeah.
those kids are now listening. I mean, it's just a trip. So I am aware of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an amazing feeling though. You should be so proud of yourself because that's
Oh,
just,
thank you, Josh.
you mean so much to generations of people through the role and the work that you do in the community. I want to ask you because it's kind of was big news earlier in the year, but you, you recently got married to John Savrnoch, the district attorney,
Mhm.
and congratulations. That's so
Thank
cool.
you.
So I
Thank
just
you.
wondered if you could just talk a little bit about that love story, how that happened, and what that's
Oh,
been like.
so sweet. Yeah, we actually been going out 8 years.
Uh-huh.
We've been together for 8 years going out. I guess
Wow.
that really only happens in the first. And we met originally because Joyce Dudley, the prior district attorney, was a friend of mine.
Okay.
And it's interesting. I've been single for a while, and she had never introduced me to anybody, but I got a call from her one day, and she said, some people from the office are going to go down, and there's this guy I really want you to meet that works for me. And we went down to the fish house, and I remember walking in, and we just sat. There was other people at the table, but it was one of those instant things where we just kept talking. And remarkable man, yeah. So that's how we originally met.
And so that was 8 years ago. You made him wait
That was
eight
eight
years,
years
huh?
ago.
Yeah.
It was 8 years ago. We both had kids. Mine has just kind of left. Mine wasn't as much a factor, but John's kids were very young. They were 13 and 15. And it was more important to both of us that their life wasn't altered all that much.
Mhm.
And so, after a few years, we certainly knew that that was the direction we were going. But we're so glad we waited, because the kids were just pivotal in the wedding ceremony. So he's got a Josh also. So Josh and Samantha walked him down the aisle, and my son Cameron walked me down the aisle. And many people may know Barney Malekian,
Huh.
who was our undersheriff and just chief of police. He actually married us,
Oh, wow.
and
Okay.
it was a beautiful, beautiful ceremony. And yeah.
Was it a big bash or was it just kind of small with
No, it was. We had probably 170 people there.
oh,
So
okay. That's
yeah,
nice.
it was nice. Speaking of music, and I actually, aside from the people that were there, don't know, and I don't say this because like dig me or anything. It was just a pinch me moment in music. We had both Alan Parsons and Kenny Loggins played for us at the wedding and played special songs, and it was a pinch me moment because it's like, I did I really go from listening to these two when I was a teenager to this? Like, how did this happen? And then how it happened because it's Santa Barbara.
Right.
But more than that, I mean, people ask me if it feels different, and it does actually.
Mhm.
We I have tremendous respect and love for John and all the work that he does in this community. And somehow it's brought us even closer when we have a good, strong, strong foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's kind of a powerhouse couple for sure, and
Mm.
he's fairly new as a DA, so everyone knows, what he's doing and everyone knows what you're doing. So it's
Well, I
really
think
cool.
we both have so much love for this community,
Mhm.
and so that's definitely that is equal on both sides.
One thing I didn't ask you before we wrap up here is celebrities,
Mhm.
people you've interviewed over the years, musicians, artists. How do Santa Barbara has a lot of talent, you mentioned a couple of
I
them,
know.
anybody, like you've met or been able to interview in studio or anywhere else?
Um, I mean, there's so many of them. I
No.
think it's the musicians, the ones that have heart when you meet them. And so, of course, so many of those live in Santa Barbara. Kenny Loggins, as I've mentioned. But, one of my favorites, and we really are so fortunate to, Alan Parsons has become a dear friend. But I think Michael McDonald is the most unassuming talent I have ever met, and he's got such a story. If you haven't read his new book, you really should. And he's out on tour right now with the Doobies, and when he opens his mouth and starts singing them, but he's a great
Not one of
interview.
those voices, yeah.
I mean, I think one of my favorite interviews. Then Gary was with us, and both of our moms had passed, and we so wished our moms were there. Is another local, but Carol Burnett. Like that was a. Am I really talking to Carol Burnett?
Right.
But even with all that, I will say. Then those are really fun, and I love that, and I love to weave the musicians into music. But I do think just talking to anybody and hearing their story is great for me. So,
Yeah, everyone has a story, It's
how about
so
you? Who's your favorite person? That it's hard to answer.
yeah, I don't really do much of the celebrity type
Yeah.
interviews, I enjoy interviewing people who are just doing amazing things in, everyday
Right.
walks of life. I recently did an hour with Naomi Jane, who I know loves you, was on the
Yes,
show. You were a teen star judge.
she's going to be a star.
She's definitely going to be a
She's
star.
she's got the it factor for sure.
Yeah, but just like talking to somebody at the start of their career and what that could be and seeing that work ethic is
Yeah.
pretty, fascinating for sure. But I love doing as a journalist just news feature stories on people doing, I recently wrote some obits. Like I wrote obit about Barney Branningham, who
Yeah.
passed away,
Yeah.
Dr. Peter McDougall, who passed away, and these are basically they're feature stories on people's lives. And
Mhm.
I love being able to capture as best as I can the essence of what made them special in the community. And it's a tall task, but feels good when people say,
Yeah.
you really captured my dad, or, whatever
Oh,
it is really well, But I mean, that's what we love about journalism. It's just the curiosity of
yeah.
every day is different. You learn something new every day. It's constantly stimulating, and you're always inspired by
Yeah.
a story you hear, So I love that. But I really appreciate your time, Catherine. It's been so cool to be able to talk to you because I know I don't have much, any experience in radio, and just sort of being able to see what you do is so admirable. It's one of those jobs that be like, wow, that would have been great to do. Like I admire those. I don't want to be an elected official. I don't want to be a politician. Any of that stuff doesn't interest me. But like somebody who can be someone who plays music, does the news, talks to people, and has a familiar, sort of comforting voice in a community, it's like that's so special. So I've always admired that about you and Gary, of course. So I
Yeah.
just got the nerve recently to ask you, So I'm
Well,
glad
thank
we are
you
able
so
to do it.
much. Maybe we can work in a role as a feature reporter coming in if there's not a conflict once a week.
Now, I do work hard. But anyway, Catherine, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. That went so quickly.
I know. And good luck. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thanks.
My name is Naomi Jane,
I'm Michelle Voigt.
and you're watching Santa Barbara Talks with Josh Molina.